I always thought the first day of retirement would taste sweet. 46 years of waking up before sunrise, doing the work nobody thanked me for, and coming home with just enough energy to nod at the TV before bed. I told myself, Harry, when you retire, you'll finally get to be part of your kids' lives again. Funny how life doesn't always follow the script you write for it. The morning after my retirement dinner, I called my daughter. Straight to voicemail. I tried my son. Same thing. I told myself they were busy. People are busy. But that tiny sting behind the ribs told me something was off. You raise kids and teach them to trust their instincts. But nobody warns you that sometimes your instincts will break your heart. I sent a message. Lunch today, my treat. No reply. Hours passed. The house got too quiet. I kept waiting for that familiar buzz from the phone, some sign that I wasn't completely alone in the world, now that I had time to think. When it finally vibrated, I grabbed it so fast I almost dropped the damn thing. It wasn't them. It was a neighbor sending me a video from the retirement party. My son was in the background saying, loud enough for the whole room to hear, Dad's retired now. Watch, he's gonna depend on us for everything. Everyone laughed. Retirement tastes different when you hear your own kids joking about you like that. I tried calling again the next morning, then the next, until one day, all I saw on my phone was a single word under each name. Blocked. No explanation, no warning, just silence. Clean, complete silence. The kind that makes you feel like you died, and nobody told you. I sat on my couch, staring at that screen, feeling something inside me collapse. You give your kids your youth, your sleep, your money, your bones, and somehow the day comes when they decide you're too heavy to carry anymore. It took me a full week before I could say the truth out loud. They didn't block my number, they blocked their father. I remember stepping outside that evening, just to inhale air that didn't feel like it belonged to an empty house. And I made myself a promise right there on the porch. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to chase. Life had handed me too many humiliations already, but I wasn't going to disappear either. And look, before we go deeper, let me say this. If you've ever been pushed aside by the people you love, stay with me. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's a lesson I learned late in life, but not too late to teach. So stick with me. I want you to hear how a father with nothing to prove found something worth standing tall for. The days that followed were quieter than they'd ever been. Retirement wasn't the celebration I imagined. It was more like sitting inside a museum built from my own memories. Every room held a picture of the kids somewhere. Baby photos, report cards, graduation shots. Proof that once upon a time, I mattered. I stopped going through my phone. No point checking a doorway that had been bricked shut. Instead, I started walking again. Long walks. The kind you take when you don't know where to go, but sitting still feels too heavy. One afternoon, I passed a construction site. Big metal bones of a new apartment complex going up. The kind of place my kids used to dream about when they talked about finally moving somewhere modern. I stood there watching the cranes swing overhead, remembering a life they never cared to ask about. Before I changed careers, I used to build places like this, block by block, deal by deal. I knew real estate inside out. Hell, there was a time when men refused to make an offer unless my signature was on the blueprint. My kids never knew that part of me. They only knew the later years, tired, quiet, predictable. The man who packed lunches and paid bills and never missed a school event. The man who got smaller and smaller so they could grow. It hit me right there on that sidewalk. Maybe they didn't block me because I was retired. Maybe they blocked me because they only saw my ending, not the man I used to be, the man I still could be. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee that went cold twice. I stared at my old contact list until one name jumped out at me. Somebody I hadn't spoken to in years. Mark Delaney, my old business partner. The guy who knew every secret to buying property before anyone realized it was valuable. The guy who once told me, Harry, you're too honest to be rich, but you're smart enough to own something big. The next morning I called him. He answered on the second ring. Harry, you alive? Barely, I told him. Got time for coffee? We met at a little diner off the highway, the kind of place where the seats lean and the waitress calls everyone sweetheart. Mark walked in with the same swagger he had 20 years ago. When he saw me, he smacked the table. "Damn, old man, what dragged you out of retirement?" I didn't sugarcoat anything. I told him the truth. "My kids blocked me." He stopped laughing. When I finished talking, he sat back, shook his head, and said, "You always gave them the best of you, Harry. Maybe it's time you remember what the rest of you can do." Then he pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. "You're not going to believe this," he said, "but that apartment project on 9th, the one your kids wouldn't shut up about online, it's going up for sale, whole complex, quiet listing, almost nobody knows yet." My heart thumped once, hard. "You're saying I could buy it? You're saying you can afford it?" He shot back with a grin. I opened the folder, ran my finger down the numbers, and for the first time since retirement, I felt something inside me wake up. Not anger, not revenge, just the realization that I wasn't done yet. And maybe, just maybe, they needed to remember that too. If you're still with me, stick around. This is where things start moving, and trust me, you're going to want to hear how this plays out. I didn't sign anything that day. I didn't rush. At my age, you learn that the fastest decisions are usually the ones you regret. But I took that folder home, laid it on the kitchen table, and looked at it like it was a map out of a storm I didn't know I was in. The numbers made sense. The location made sense. The timing made too much sense. Almost like life had been waiting for me to open my eyes again. But buying an entire apartment complex isn't like picking up milk from the store. It takes planning. It takes patience. And most of all, it takes the kind of quiet confidence my kids had forgotten I ever had. The next morning, I took a long walk through my neighborhood, the kind of slow stroll an old man takes when he's thinking deeper than he's walking. I found myself standing in front of the park, where I used to push my kids on the swings. I sat down on the same bench I used to rest on while they ran in circles. Back then, they'd look over every few minutes just to make sure I was watching. Now they wouldn't notice if I disappeared. I closed my eyes and took a breath that hurt on the way in. Then I said something I hadn't said in years. "Harry, don't let them tell you who you are." When I got home, I called Mark again. "Let's start the process," I told him. My voice didn't shake, but my hands did. Not from fear, just from the weight of finally stepping back into the world. He handled the legal maze. I handled the funding. And let me tell you something. People forget what an old man with a lifetime of savings and smart investments can do. They think retirement means weakness. But a man who's lived long enough knows how to make money sleep, breathe, and multiply. Within 2 weeks, the paperwork was approved. Within 3, the signatures were lined up. And on the morning of the closing, the realtor slid the final document across the table and said, "Congratulations, Mr. Harrison. The complex is officially yours." I stared at my own name on that deed. It had been a long time since a title made me feel anything other than old. But this felt like waking up. I didn't tell my kids, didn't announce a thing. I just quietly stepped into my new role. Inspections, renovations, meetings with the property manager. I made sure everything was clean, safe, and running smoother than butter in July. I walked those halls at night when no one was around. Sometimes I'd hear laughter from a unit and smile. Sometimes I'd hear arguments and keep walking. Life always has its noise. You don't have to be part of it to understand it. A month later, I was leaving the property office when the manager ran up behind me. "Mr. Harrison, you'll want to see this." He handed me a stack of newly signed tenant files. I flipped through casually, until I saw 2 names that made my heart freeze. My daughter, my son, both leases signed, both units rented, both now living under the roof they never imagined belonged to me. The manager chuckled. "Funny coincidence, huh? Kids of yours?" I smiled the kind of smile only an old man with a secret can smile. "Something like that," I said. I didn't go knock on their doors, didn't peek at their windows, didn't check their mailboxes. I didn't need to. Life has its own timing, and I wasn't about to rush the moment the truth decided to walk out of the shadows. Instead, I kept doing my job, quiet, invisible, present. 2 weeks later, the universe nudged things along. I was reviewing maintenance requests in the manager's office when he groaned. 2 new complaints from the brother and sister in 4B and 6C. They're demanding. I recognized the tone. My kids were always polite to the world, but sharp to the people they thought wouldn't matter. He kept reading. Fix the heat immediately. Respond faster. This place should be run better. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Softly, old man, softly. Because the truth was coming. Because the reveal was inevitable. Because life was about to teach them a lesson without me saying a single word. And if you're still with me, hold tight. The moment everything snaps into place is coming next. And trust me, you're going to feel every second of it. I remember the day the reveal began. Not all at once. Not like some dramatic movie twist, but slow, creeping, inevitable. The way sunrise climbs up a wall before anyone notices. It started with a knock on the property office door. I was sitting in the back, going over invoices with the manager, when he called out, "Come in." And there she was. My daughter. Standing with her arms crossed, irritation practically leaking out of her pores. She didn't see me at first. The office had one of those half walls, and I was in the shadowed corner, pretending to be busy. I watched her tap her foot like she was drilling a hole through the floor. "Hi," she said sharply. "I've submitted 3 maintenance requests. 3, and nobody's done anything." The manager smiled politely, the way someone does when they've dealt with the same personality a few too many times. "I understand. We've scheduled the technician." "No," she snapped. "You don't understand. The heat in my unit is ridiculous. My brother's having issues too. And I know this place is under new ownership, so things should be improving, not getting worse." New ownership. She said it like she expected the new owner to descend from the heavens with a golden wrench and fix everything at once. The manager glanced at me and I just gave him a tiny nod. "Keep going, don't look my way." He didn't know she was my daughter. I never told him. Nobody knew except Mark and the lawyer. Privacy is a luxury you learn to protect when you hit a certain age. My daughter kept on talking, complaining about the thermostat, about the hallways, about a squeaky hinge as if it were a national emergency. I listened, and I won't lie to you. A part of me stung. Not because she was rude, but because I remembered a little girl who used to sit on my shoulders and tug my ear when she wanted attention. A girl who once cried if she thought she'd disappointed me. Now she couldn't even recognize me 5 feet away. When she finally left, the manager let out a long breath. "She's spirited." I chuckled. "You have no idea." He returned to the paperwork. I slipped out quietly, taking the back exit. The afternoon sun hit my face, warm and comforting, like a hand on the shoulder from someone who actually remembers your birthday. Later that week, it was my son who made the next move. I was walking the corridor near the mail room when I heard a familiar voice echoing down the hallway. "This is unacceptable. I'm not paying rent for a place that doesn't take basic things seriously." I peeked around the corner. He was talking to a maintenance guy who looked like he'd rather face a nest of angry hornets. My son was taller than I remembered, broader too, but the same sharp jawline he got from his mother. He was holding a stack of papers, his lease, maintenance tickets, and probably a list of other grievances. "Sir," the maintenance guy said patiently, "we've put in the request. The owner has to sign off." "Well then, get the owner," my son snapped. "I want to talk to him." The maintenance guy raised his eyebrows like, "Oh, you sure about that?" I hid behind the corner and almost laughed out loud. Almost. But the kind of laugh that comes from the ache of knowing things could have been different if they'd chosen differently. I walked away before he could see me. The halls echoed behind me with the sound of his irritation bouncing off the walls, but all I heard was the silence of the phone that never rang. A few days later, the moment I'd been waiting for finally stepped into the light. Every year, tenants receive a standard landlord disclosure packet. It has tax info, emergency contacts, and at the top, always, the legal owner's full name, exactly as recorded on the deed. That year was no exception. We printed the packets, we sealed them, we mailed them, and then silence. The kind of silence that feels like the world holding its breath. On a quiet Tuesday morning, I was sorting documents in the office when I heard the building's front door slam open hard enough to rattle the glass. Heavy footsteps, quick, angry. I didn't have to wonder who it was. My daughter burst into the office with the packet crushed in her fist. "Is this some kind of mistake?" she demanded, waving the papers at the manager. "Why is my father's name on this? He doesn't own anything like this. He wouldn't even know how." That one cut a little. Not deep, but enough to remind me how much she underestimated the man who raised her. The manager blinked. "Ma'am, that is the legal deed. Your father is the owner." she scoffed, but her voice cracked. Cracked in a way that told me denial was fighting a losing battle. She opened the packet again, staring at the signature. My signature, the same signature on every birthday card she ever got from me. By then, my son stormed in behind her, holding his own packet. What the hell is going on? Why is Dad? And then he saw me. I hadn't planned on being there. I'd thought I'd be home sipping tea when they found out, letting the shock sink in before they came to me. But life likes symmetry, and I guess it wanted us all in that tiny room together. My son froze. My daughter's eyes went wide. For a moment, nobody breathed. "Dad?" my son finally whispered. I stood up slowly. My knees popped like old branches. Retirement doesn't spare the joints. And I said the first honest sentence that came to me. "You blocked my number. So I bought the one place you couldn't block." No anger, no shouting, just the quiet truth of a man who'd been pushed aside long enough. They didn't speak. Not at first. My daughter's eyes filled with tears. She kept trying to blink away. My son looked down at his packet like the words might rearrange themselves into something less painful. Then came the apology. Soft, shaky, uncertain. Not perfect, but real. And standing there in that office, watching my children finally look at me, really look at me, I realized something I didn't expect. This wasn't revenge. It was a reminder that I was still here, still standing, still their father, even when they forgot to be my kids. And if you think that was the end of it, stick with me. There's a whole lot more they had to learn before we reached the finish line. They didn't leave the office right away. My daughter stood there gripping that packet like it was a piece of her childhood she'd somehow misplaced. My son kept running his thumb over my signature as if touching it might make this whole thing make more sense. The manager quietly excused himself, leaving the three of us in a silence so thick it could have been poured like concrete. My daughter was the first to speak, her voice small. "Dad, why didn't you tell us?" I let out a long breath. Not angry, just tired. "Sweetheart, you blocked me. Both of you did. What was I supposed to do? Send a carrier pigeon?" She winced, and my son's shoulders sagged like he suddenly remembered gravity. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I wasn't trying to win anything. I was just stating the truth in the simplest way an old man knows how. My son looked at me finally, really looked at me. "We just needed space," he said. "After you retired, everything felt like pressure, like we'd have to step up, take care of things." "Take care of things?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. Did I ever ask for that? Did I ever say I needed it? He didn't answer, because we all knew I hadn't. I gestured toward the chairs, and they sat across from me like kids waiting for a principal's verdict. It broke something in me to see them that stiff, that unsure, but maybe it needed to break. "When you blocked me," I said quietly, "I didn't get angry. I just disappeared. I figured you'd come back when you were ready, but days turned into weeks. And then I heard what you said at the retirement party." My daughter squeezed her eyes shut. "Dad, we were joking." "It wasn't a funny one," I said. "And I heard it because someone sent me the video, not because you called to say sorry." They both fell silent again. Not defensive, not dismissive, just quietly ashamed. A kind of shame people feel only when they realize they hurt someone without meaning to, and the pain landed deeper than they ever expected. I leaned back and folded my hands. You know what hurt the most? Not the blocking, not the jokes. It was how easily you assumed I'd become a burden. Like you'd forgotten the man I was before I became the man who raised you. My son finally wiped his face with both hands, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "We messed up," he whispered. "Badly." My daughter nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I'd seen those tears once when she fell off her bike, once when her prom date stood her up, and once when she moved into her first apartment. But this time, they were for me. And that did something inside my chest. I softened my voice. "Kids, I didn't buy this place to punish you. I bought it because I remembered who I was. Because you forced me to look at my life after retirement and realize I wasn't done yet." My daughter blinked. "Then why didn't you tell us?" "Because," I said gently, "you didn't want to hear from me. And I wanted you to come back because you remembered you loved me, not because you needed something fixed or some bill paid." I needed to know the door swung both ways. They sat with that for a long time. Finally, my daughter got up, walked around the desk, and hugged me, just wrapped herself around me like she used to when thunderstorms scared her. My son followed, awkward at first, but then he held on too. I'm not a man who cries easily. Life toughens you up, gives your tears fewer exits as the years go on. But that moment, that was one of the closest I've come in decades. After the weight of that moment settled, I invited them back to my house. Not as property owner and tenants, not as a man making a point, but as a father who finally had his kids in the same room again. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I used to cut their sandwiches into triangles because they swore it tasted better that way. I made coffee. They drank it even though they both hate how strong I brew it. Some habits never die. I don't want you to worry, I said. I'm not raising your rent. I'm not changing your leases. I'm not threatening you with eviction. This isn't a power play. My son cracked a small, shaky smile. Sure feels like one. I chuckled. Maybe to you, but to me, this was about remembering I still had a life to live. My daughter looked around the house slowly, taking in the pictures she hadn't looked at in years. We should have been here, she whispered. We should have been helping you, checking on you, calling you. You should have, I agreed softly. But you weren't ready, and now you are. That's enough for me. They stayed for hours. We talked. Not just surface talk, the real thing. Stuff we should have said years ago. Mistakes, fears, the way they thought I'd crumble after retiring, the way I thought they didn't need me anymore. Turns out we were all wrong, and as the sun dipped low, my daughter asked me something that made me smile. Dad, do you want us to unblock your number now? Only if you plan on using it, I said. They laughed, and this time it didn't hurt. When they finally left that night, something shifted inside me. Not pride, not satisfaction, just peace. The quiet kind that doesn't need applause or revenge to feel real. But don't think the story ends there. There were consequences. Conversations with the whole family, rumors, reactions, and a moment, one moment, that showed my kids exactly why you never underestimate a father who's lived long enough to know what truly matters. And I'll take you through all of it in the final chapter. Stick with me. You'll want to hear how this story lands. My daughter blinked. Then why didn't you tell us? Because, I said gently, you didn't want to hear from me. And I wanted you to come back because you remembered you loved me, not because you needed something fixed or some bill paid. I needed to know the door swung both ways. They sat with that for a long time. Finally, my daughter got up, walked around the desk, and hugged me, just wrapped herself around me like she used to when thunderstorms scared her. My son followed, awkward at first, but then he held on too. I'm not a man who cries easily. Life toughens you up, gives your tears fewer exits as the years go on. But that moment, that was one of the closest I've come in decades. After the weight of that moment settled, I invited them back to my house. Not as property owner and tenants, not as a man making a point, but as a father who finally had his kids in the same room again. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I used to cut their sandwiches into triangles because they swore it tasted better that way. I made coffee. They drank it even though they both hate how strong I brew it. Some habits never die. I don't want you to worry, I said. I'm not raising your rent. I'm not changing your leases. I'm not threatening you with eviction. This isn't a power play. My son cracked a small, shaky smile. Sure feels like one. I chuckled. Maybe to you, but to me, this was about remembering I still had a life to live. My daughter looked around the house slowly, taking in the pictures she hadn't looked at in years. We should have been here, she whispered. We should have been helping you, checking on you, calling you. You should have, I agreed softly. But you weren't ready, and now you are. That's enough for me. They stayed for hours. We talked. Not just surface talk, the real thing. Stuff we should have said years ago. Mistakes, fears, the way they thought I'd crumble after retiring, the way I thought they didn't need me anymore. Turns out we were all wrong, and as the sun dipped low, my daughter asked me something that made me smile. Dad, do you want us to unblock your number now? Only if you plan on using it, I said. They laughed, and this time it didn't hurt. When they finally left that night, something shifted inside me. Not pride, not satisfaction, just peace. The quiet kind that doesn't need applause or revenge to feel real. But don't think the story ends there. There were consequences. Conversations with the whole family, rumors, reactions, and one moment, that showed my kids exactly why you never underestimate a father who's lived long enough to know what truly matters. And I'll take you through all of it in the final chapter. Stick with me. You'll want to hear how this story lands. The fallout didn't hit all at once. It trickled in, quiet at first, then loud enough to rattle every branch of the family tree. The story of what happened spread faster than wildfire on dry grass. No one knew the full truth, of course. They only knew fragments, the blocking, the retirement party jokes, the mysterious sale of the building, the sudden purchase by some investor. No one suspected the investor was me. Not yet. My son and daughter came over more often after that night. At first, every visit felt awkward, like we were all relearning how to speak the same emotional language. But slowly, step by step, it became natural again. My daughter would stop by after work just to have tea. My son helped fix the squealing hinge on my front door. Those small acts, those everyday moments, they softened years of misunderstanding in ways grand gestures never could. But the rest of the family wasn't so graceful. One evening, maybe a week after everything came to light between us, my sister Fatima called me. She always had a talent for sniffing out drama like a bloodhound. "Did you really buy the building?" she demanded. "Yes." "And your kids didn't know?" "No." A long whistle. "You're a colder man than I remember." "I'm not cold," I said calmly. "I'm just done being invisible." She didn't know what to say to that, and for once, silence hung on her end of the line. But the real storm came during our monthly family dinner, a tradition we all pretended to enjoy, even though half the people there spent most of the evening judging everyone else's life choices. My son and daughter insisted on attending with me. I didn't ask them to, they just showed up. One on each side, like my own personal honor guard. We entered the restaurant together, and I swear you could have heard a pin drop. Chairs scraped quietly, heads turned. Someone muttered, "There they are," like we were royalty walking into court. My brother Kareem spoke first, loud enough for half the restaurant to hear. "So, the prodigal children returned to their father." My daughter rolled her eyes. My son muttered, "Here we go," under his breath. I didn't rise to the bait, not yet. We sat, ordered food, tried to act normal, but I could feel it. The pressure building, like the whole room was waiting for the bomb to drop. And of course it did. During dessert, Kareem leaned back and said, "So, brother, rumor has it you bought the building your kids live in. Must be nice having money to waste." My daughter stiffened. My son clenched his jaw. I set my spoon down, not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to shift the atmosphere. "I didn't waste money," I said. "I invested in myself, something I forgot how to do while raising everyone else." A few gasps. Someone whispered, "Oh, he's serious today." Kareem scoffed. "Invest in yourself? By buying control over your own children?" My son slammed his palm on the table. "It wasn't control. We messed up. We know we messed up. What he did, it made us realize what we were throwing away." My daughter nodded. "Dad didn't punish us. He made us see him again." The table went still. Fatima cleared her throat. "So, what really happened?" My kids exchanged a glance with me, silently asking permission. I nodded, and they told them everything. The blocking, the distancing, the retirement party jokes. The way I heard every word behind a thin wall, pretending it didn't pierce deeper than any knife. Some relatives winced, some stared at their plates, some pretended they suddenly had urgent notifications on their phones. But I didn't speak until they were done. "I never wanted revenge," I said. "I just wanted my children back, and buying the building, that wasn't about them. That was about remembering who I was before I let myself fade into the background of my own life." I looked at my son and daughter, and it turns out they didn't need punishment. They needed perspective. Silence stretched for a moment. Then Fatima stood up, clapping slowly. "Well," she said, "if this isn't the most dramatic family arc I've ever seen, I don't know what is." Everyone laughed, awkward, genuine, relieved. Even Kareem cracked a smile. The tension broke, the air lightened, conversation flowed, and for the first time in a long time I felt something warm settle across my shoulders. Belonging. Later that night, as we left the restaurant, my daughter slipped her arm through mine. "We're proud of you, you know," she said. My son nodded. "We didn't see it before, but, Dad, you built something new. For yourself. That's what we should have been celebrating." I didn't respond right away. I just looked up at the streetlights flickering gently in the breeze. The world felt different. Not because it had changed, but because I had. I dropped them off at their apartment building. They lingered on the sidewalk, not wanting the night to end. "Dad," my daughter said, "can we make this a weekly thing?" My son added, "Yeah, dinner or coffee or just something." I smiled, "Of course." They hugged me, sincerely, tightly, the kind of hug that says, "We're here now, for real." As I drove away, I passed the building, my building, its windows glowing like a constellation I somehow ended up owning. But the real victory wasn't made of bricks or rent or deeds. It was the two silhouettes in the lobby waving at me through the glass. I didn't just get my children back. I got myself back, and that was worth more than any property on earth. Life has a funny way of circling back with the truth. If you want to hear how other families cracked apart and stitched themselves back together, I've got plenty more stories waiting for you. If you think this was dramatic, wait until you hear what happened when my sister tried to evict me from my own house.